Cenote Dos Ojos incident. On July 8, 2021, Carlos Mendoza led an advanced cave diving expedition into Mexico's Cenote Dos Ojos system. Carlos was 31 years old and had been teaching cave diving for 12 years. His clients were experienced divers, Janet Morrison, a 38-year-old underwater photographer specializing in cenote systems, and Tom Bradley, a 42-year-old technical diver from Texas. Cenote Dos Ojos, meaning two eyes, was one of the world's longest underwater cave systems, with over 80 kilometers of surveyed passages. The cenote featured two separate entrances connected by a complex network of tunnels and caverns. Underground rivers flowed through limestone corridors carved over millions of years. The water temperature remained constant at 25 degrees Celsius year-round. Carlos had guided over 800 cave dives without a serious incident. The team met at 8 a.m. for equipment preparation and dive planning. They would enter through the north eye, penetrate 200 meters into the main tunnel, explore the halocline where fresh water meets salt water, then return via the same route. Maximum depth would be 18 meters with a planned bottom time of 45 minutes. Each diver carried twin 12-liter tanks, primary and backup lights, and emergency signaling devices. Carlos attached the main guideline at the cavern zone entrance, the point where natural light disappeared. The team descended into crystal clear water, with visibility exceeding 100 meters. Limestone formations created cathedral-like chambers decorated with stalactites and flowstone. At 15 meters depth, they passed through the halocline, a distinct layer where fresh groundwater mixed with saltwater intrusion from the ocean. The density difference created a mirror-like effect that distorted vision. Janet began photographing the unique geological formations. Her powerful strobes illuminated hidden chambers and revealed intricate details in the rock. Tom maintained position as safety diver, monitoring air supplies and navigation. At 150 meters penetration, Carlos noticed unusual movement in a side passage. A large green moray eel, approximately 5 feet long, emerged from a crevice between limestone blocks. Moray eels were common in cenotes connected to the ocean, but this specimen was exceptionally large. The eel's behavior seemed agitated. It opened and closed its mouth repeatedly, displaying rows of sharp teeth. Carlos signaled for the team to maintain distance and continue along the main guideline. As they swam past the side passage, two more eels appeared. The largest one, nearly 6 feet long with a massive head, positioned itself directly in their path. Janet, focused on photographing the limestone formations, didn't notice the eel until it was 2 meters away. The eel's defensive posture escalated quickly. It coiled its muscular body and opened its mouth wide, revealing a bright yellow interior lined with needle-sharp teeth. Carlos recognized breeding season territorial behavior. The eels were defending their nesting area against perceived intruders. He signaled for an immediate retreat, but the narrow passage limited their maneuvering options. Janet's camera housing caught on a limestone protrusion as she tried to back away. The housing's lanyard wrapped around a rock formation, temporarily trapping her. Tom moved to assist, but his movement triggered the largest eel's attack response. The eel lunged forward with surprising speed, its jaws clamping down on Tom's right forearm, just above his diving glove. The bite penetrated the 5mm neoprene suit and drew blood immediately. Tom's regulator fell from his mouth as he instinctively pulled away. Carlos quickly inserted his backup regulator into Tom's mouth, while simultaneously signaling for emergency ascent. The eel released its grip but remained aggressively positioned. Blood in the water attracted the attention of the other eels, which began moving toward the group. Janet freed herself from the limestone snag and activated her emergency signaling device. The three divers began a controlled emergency exit, following the guideline while Tom's arm continued bleeding. At 100 meters from the entrance, they encountered a fourth eel blocking their path. Carlos used his dive light to create bright flashes, temporarily disorienting the eel enough for the group to pass. They reached the cavern zone and ascended to 5 meters for a safety stop. Tom's bite wound required immediate medical attention. At the surface, Carlos administered first aid and called for emergency medical transport. Tom received 12 stitches at the local clinic and antibiotic treatment to prevent infection from the eel's bacteria-laden mouth. Janet's photographs captured the moment before the attack, showing the eel's impressive size and aggressive posture. The incident report noted that breeding season made normally docile eels extremely territorial and dangerous to cave divers. Florida Springs Incident. On September 22, 2020, Rick Patterson organized a cave diving trip to Ginnie Springs in northern Florida. Rick was 45 years old and owned a local dive shop. He had been diving Florida's spring systems for 20 years. His group included Michelle Santos, a 29-year-old cave diving instructor, Alex Thompson, a 33-year-old recreational diver visiting from Michigan, and Lisa Chang, a 24-year-old marine biology student from the University of Florida. Ginny Springs was famous for its crystal clear water and extensive cave system. The main spring produced 72 million gallons of water daily at a constant temperature of 22 degrees Celsius. The spring entrance opened into a large basin before narrowing into underwater passages that extended for miles through the limestone aquifer. September marked the beginning of alligator breeding season in Florida, when territorial males became increasingly aggressive. Local wildlife officials had posted warnings about unusual alligator activity near several spring systems. Rick had noticed the signs, but assumed they referred to surface encounters, not diving activities. The group arrived at 9 a.m. and began equipment preparation near the wooden dock. The water appeared unusually murky compared to Ginny's typical gin-clear conditions. Tannins from recent rainfall had reduced visibility to about 15 meters instead of the normal 50 meters. Rick briefed the group on the cave system layout and emergency procedures. They would enter the main spring, descend to the cave mouth at 8 meters depth, and explore the first chamber for 30 minutes before returning. Alex had limited cave diving experience, so they planned a conservative penetration distance of 75 meters. Lisa carried underwater research equipment to collect water samples for her thesis on spring ecosystem health. As they entered the water, Rick noticed unusual ripples near the spring's edge where cypress trees created overhead cover. Something large had recently disturbed the water surface. Michelle spotted fresh gouges in the sandy bottom near the cave entrance, claw marks nearly 15 centimeters long. She pointed them out to Rick, who recognized them as alligator tracks. The scratches were recent, made within the last few hours. Despite this evidence, Rick decided to proceed with the dive. Florida springs typically remain too cold for alligators to spend extended time underwater. The group descended along the limestone walls toward the cave entrance. At 6 meters depth, the water temperature dropped noticeably. Lisa activated her sampling equipment and began taking measurements. Alex followed closely behind Rick, maintaining visual contact in the reduced visibility. As they approached the cave mouth, Michelle's dive light illuminated something unexpected. Two large eyes reflected the light from inside the cave entrance. The alligator was massive, easily 11 feet long with a head the size of a small boat motor. The reptile had positioned itself directly inside the cave mouth, blocking the entrance passage. Its powerful tail extended into the darkness behind it. Rick immediately signaled for the group to stop and back away slowly. Alligators typically avoided divers, but this individual showed no signs of retreating. Instead, it maintained its position and began displaying aggressive behavior. The gator's mouth opened slightly, revealing rows of conical teeth designed for crushing. Its body language indicated territorial defense rather than predator-prey behavior. This was a breeding male defending his chosen territory. Alex, unfamiliar with alligator behavior, continued swimming forward despite Rick's signals. The movement triggered the alligator's attack response. With explosive speed, the gator lunged from the cave entrance directly toward Alex. The reptile's jaws opened wide, revealing a pink mouth interior lined with 80 sharp teeth. Rick pushed Alex aside just as the alligator's jaws snapped shut where his torso had been moments earlier. The impact knocked Alex's regulator from his mouth and sent his mask flying. Michelle immediately moved to assist, inserting her backup regulator into Alex's mouth while he struggled to replace his mask. The alligator, having missed its target, began circling the group with increasing agitation. Its movements created powerful underwater currents that stirred up sediment from the bottom. Visibility dropped to less than 5 meters, making it impossible to track the predator's position. Rick activated his emergency whistle to alert surface support. The sound seemed to further agitate the alligator, which began tail slapping to assert dominance over its territory. Lisa, still focused on her research equipment, didn't realize the danger until Michelle grabbed her arm and pointed toward 2 more sets of eyes emerging from the shadows. 3 alligators now surrounded the dive group in the confined spring basin. The largest male continued its aggressive displays while the smaller individuals maintained defensive positions near the cave system. Rick made the decision for an emergency surface evacuation. The group began a rapid ascent, but the dominant male followed them upward. At 3 meters depth, the alligator made a second attack attempt, this time targeting Michelle's fins. Its jaws clamped down on her right fin, the impact transmitted through her leg. She kicked frantically with her left leg while Rick struck the alligator's snout with his dive light. The reptile released its grip and sank back toward the bottom. The group surfaced immediately and swam quickly to the dock. Alex suffered minor cuts from lost equipment, and Michelle's fin showed puncture marks from the alligator's teeth. Local wildlife officers arrived within 20 minutes and confirmed that 3 large males had claimed territory in the spring system during breeding season. The cave entrance remained closed to divers for 6 weeks until the alligators moved to deeper water. Blue Hole Incident. On March 15, 2019, Mike Rodriguez prepared for what seemed like a routine dive at Belize's Great Blue Hole. Mike was 34 years old and had worked as a dive master for 8 years. He guided 3 tourists that morning. The Great Blue Hole stretched 300 meters across and plunged 125 meters into the Caribbean Sea. Ancient limestone formations created a circular sinkhole that attracted divers from around the world. The group departed from Ambergris Cay at 7:30 a.m. aboard a 28-foot dive boat. Weather conditions were ideal with 2-foot swells and unlimited surface visibility. Mike briefed the group about the dive plan. They would descend to 40 meters along the rim, explore the limestone stalactites for 25 minutes, then ascend slowly with a safety stop at 5 meters. He mentioned the typical marine life, reef sharks, groupers, and angelfish. What he didn't mention was the unusual shark behavior reported by other dive operators that week. The team entered the water at 9:15 a.m. Surface visibility was excellent at 30 meters. They descended along the vertical wall, passing through layers of different colored water. At 15 meters, the water changed from light blue to deep indigo. Sarah checked her depth gauge and air supply. Her tank showed 180 bar of pressure. David adjusted his underwater camera housing and tested the strobe lights. The flashes illuminated the limestone formations in brilliant white bursts. At 25 meters, they encountered the first marine life. A large Nassau grouper, nearly 4 feet long, observed them from a crevice in the wall. Emma pointed excitedly at the fish, her first encounter with such a large specimen. As they continued descending, the walls became more dramatic. Ancient stalactites hung from the ceiling like stone daggers, formed when the cave was above sea level thousands of years ago. At 35 meters, Mike noticed movement in the blue water beyond the wall. 3 Caribbean reef sharks swam in lazy circles about 20 meters away. Each shark was approximately 6 feet long, with the characteristic blunt snout and bronze coloring. Mike signaled to the group and pointed toward the sharks. This was exactly what they had hoped to see. David immediately began photographing, his camera strobes firing repeatedly. The bright flashes seemed to catch the sharks' attention. Instead of maintaining their distance, they began swimming closer. Within minutes, 2 more sharks appeared from the deeper water, then 3 more. The sharks' behavior was different from Mike's previous encounters. Instead of showing mild curiosity before swimming away, they circled tighter and moved with more aggressive body language. Their pectoral fins were lowered and their swimming pattern became more erratic. Sarah noticed the change first. As a marine biologist, she recognized territorial behavior. She tapped her tank with her dive knife to get Mike's attention. Mike looked at his dive computer. They had been at depth for 18 minutes and were consuming air faster than planned due to the excitement. Emma's breathing had accelerated and her tank pressure was dropping quickly. The largest shark, nearly 8 feet long, approached within 5 meters. Its movements were no longer casual. David continued taking photos, unaware that his strobes might be triggering the aggressive response. Mike made the decision to abort the dive. He signaled for an immediate ascent. The group began swimming upward along the wall, but the sharks followed. At 25 meters, the largest shark made a close pass directly in front of Sarah. She pressed herself against the limestone wall, her heart rate spiking. Mike grabbed David's camera and switched off the strobe function. Without the bright flashes, the shark's behavior began to calm slightly. The group continued their ascent, maintaining visual contact with the sharks, until they reached 15 meters. At the safety stop, Mike counted 7 sharks circling below them in the blue water. After 3 minutes, they surfaced safely. Back on the boat, Sarah explained that the sharks had likely been feeding in the area and viewed the dive lights as competition or threat stimuli. The group had encountered the most aggressive reef shark behavior Mike had seen in his 8 years of guiding. Emma decided to skip the afternoon dive. Bahamas Blue Holes incident. On November 14, 2022, Dr. Amanda Foster led a deep-diving research expedition to Dean's Blue Hole in the Bahamas. Amanda was 41 years old and specialized in technical diving for marine research. She held certifications in mixed gas diving and had explored blue holes throughout the Caribbean. Her support team included James Mitchell, a 39-year-old dive safety officer, and Roberto Silva, a 36-year-old local guide who knew the blue hole's unique characteristics. Dean's Blue Hole was the world's deepest known saltwater blue hole, plunging 202 meters into the seafloor near Long Island. The circular opening measured 25 meters across at the surface before expanding into a massive underwater cavern. At 20 meters depth, the hole opened into a cathedral-like chamber over 100 meters wide. Ancient limestone formations created dramatic overhangs and swim-through passages. The site was famous among technical divers for its depth and pristine conditions. Recent reports from local fishermen mentioned unusual shark activity near the blue hole. Large hammerheads had been spotted in groups, behavior typically associated with seasonal migrations. Amanda's research focused on deep-water marine ecosystems and the vertical migration patterns of pelagic species. The team planned a deep penetration dive to 80 meters, using trimix breathing gas to prevent nitrogen narcosis. Equipment preparation began at dawn, with meticulous attention to gas mixing and decompression planning. Amanda carried twin 18-liter tanks containing 18% oxygen, 45% helium, and 37% nitrogen for the bottom portion of the dive. She also wore additional tanks with different gas mixtures for decompression stops during ascent. James monitored surface support equipment and maintained radio contact with the research vessel. Roberto briefed the team on local current patterns and marine life behavior. He mentioned that hammerhead sharks use the Blue Hole as a cleaning station where smaller fish remove parasites from their skin. The behavior typically occurred at depths between 30 and 60 meters. At 8:30 a.m., the team entered the water in calm conditions with unlimited surface visibility. Amanda activated her dive computer and began descent along the eastern wall of the Blue Hole. At 15 meters, the walls opened dramatically into the main chamber. Sunlight filtering from above created cathedral lighting effects on the limestone formations. The water remained crystal clear with visibility exceeding 60 meters in all directions. At 25 meters, Amanda encountered the first marine life. A school of Caribbean reef sharks, about 8 individuals, swam in loose formation near the wall. Their behavior appeared normal, showing mild curiosity before continuing their patrol pattern. James maintained position above Amanda, monitoring her descent rate and gas consumption. At 45 meters depth, the water temperature dropped to 24 degrees Celsius, and the lighting became more subdued. Amanda's depth gauge showed 50 meters when she first spotted the hammerheads. 3 great hammerheads, each over 12 feet long, emerged from the blue water beyond the wall. Their distinctive hammer-shaped heads swayed rhythmically as they swam. The sharks showed no immediate interest in the divers, maintaining their distance while following parallel courses. Amanda continued descending toward her target depth of 80 meters. At 65 meters, her dive computer indicated the beginning of significant nitrogen narcosis effects, despite the helium mixture. Technical divers called this depth range the martini effect, where each additional 10 meters felt like drinking another alcoholic beverage. Amanda's thinking became slightly impaired, but her training and experience helped maintain proper procedures. At 72 meters depth, she encountered something unprecedented. A school of over 20 great hammerheads occupied the deepest visible portion of the Blue Hole. The sharks ranged from 10 to 15 feet in length, with several massive females that appeared to be pregnant. Their behavior suggested a congregation related to mating or feeding activities. Amanda had never documented such a large gathering of hammerheads in a Blue Hole environment. She began taking photographs and water samples while maintaining neutral buoyancy, 10 meters above the shark school. The largest female, nearly 16 feet long, began showing interest in Amanda's equipment. The shark's approach triggered responses from other individuals in the school. Within minutes, 5 large hammerheads surrounded Amanda at her maximum depth. Their behavior remained curious rather than aggressive, but their size and proximity created an intimidating presence. Amanda's gas supply indicated she had reached her planned turnaround point. She began her ascent, but noticed her dive computer displaying error messages. The depth sensor had malfunctioned, showing inconsistent readings that made decompression calculations unreliable. Without accurate depth information, Amanda couldn't safely calculate her required decompression stops. The hammerheads followed her ascent, maintaining their interest in her equipment and movements. At what she estimated was 50 meters depth, Amanda attempted to signal James for assistance. The nitrogen narcosis effects, combined with equipment failure and the presence of multiple large predators, created a dangerous combination of stress factors. She made the critical decision to abort the research dive and begin immediate emergency ascent procedures. Using backup depth measurement techniques and conservative gas management, Amanda slowly ascended while the hammerhead school dispersed back into deeper water. She completed extended decompression stops at 20, 15, 10, and 5 meters before surfacing after 95 minutes underwater. Post-dive analysis revealed that her computer's pressure sensor had failed due to extreme depth exposure. The hammerhead congregation represented the largest gathering ever documented in a Blue Hole system, but the equipment failure prevented detailed scientific documentation of the encounter.